Everybody wants to be a cat, because a cat's the only cat who knows where it's at. Everybody's
joining us right now, one of my personal heroes, not just because he's brilliant and is right on pretty much every issue, but also
and he writes nice cat songs.
Because he actually, well, he didn't write this, but he certainly recorded it. The fact that he released an album called Feline Groovy, Songs for Swingin' Cats. Mark Steyn, thank you for joining us, sir.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Last time we spoke, I was actually in Washington for a couple of days.
That's right.
And the only thing I enjoyed about that entire trip was coming on your show.
Yeah,
and
that's so sweet.
Jamie said the morning commute, everything was feline groovy on the morning commute that morning. And so that the traffic update was the only thing I enjoyed about my trip to Washington.
Jamie knows what's going down. Well, listen, there's so much to talk to you about. I love your latest article about what we saw from the mayor of Philadelphia after this obviously ISIS-inspired attack. But I want to first start with the Syrian refugee crisis in Germany. We're seeing these horrific stories. And Mark Steyn, it seems like every time anyone here suggests that we should take a pause or reinvestigate bringing in Syrian refugees, we hear this from the president.
That's why we must leave these methods where they belong, in the past. They are not who we are, and they are not American. But as Americans, that's not who we are. That's not who we are. That's not what we're about. That's not who we are.
That's not who we are. That's not who we are. It goes on and on, actually. That's not who we are. Well, are we Germany, where we see rampant sexual assaults committed by these refugees, apparently, without much repercussion?
Well, whether or not it's who we are, the question is, who are we going to be? In Vienna, the police chief has just announced that it's unsafe for women to go out unaccompanied. That's Austria.
Wow.
So, regardless of who Austria is, who they're going to be in 5 years' time seems to be entirely different.
Great point.
In Germany, the organs of the state at every level, including the equivalent of NPR, PBS, the state broadcasters, the local police, and the political class lied to the people in order to... In fact, the police stood around as women were sexually assaulted. They had 140 police present as 1,000 young Muslim men were sexually assaulting these women. When Germans turned out to protest the sexual assault, they managed to find 1,500 policemen to look after that. Sweden, Finland, the same thing. Switzerland, the same story. A mass organized sexual assault covered up by the authorities. So the question is, the question is for Obama whether you want to live in reality or whether you want to live in the Angela Merkel fantasy land, which isn't working out too great for those young German women who are on the receiving end of it.
And yet here in this country, when people raise legitimate concerns about these refugees coming to this country, are we vetting them properly? Are we making sure we looked into their backgrounds? And when people say we don't have the ability to do that effectively, they are mocked. And they're even mocking Congress tonight or tomorrow night at the State of the Union address, where in the First Lady's box there will be a Syrian refugee sitting next to her.
Right. I think this has increasingly less. I think people understand it at a certain core level. Even the government of Canada, which is a brand new liberal government, announced that it would not be taking single young men. Nobody knows who these people are. You can't call up the DMV in Aleppo and verify any of the information. You can buy a Syrian passport for about $600. Nobody knows it. And by the way, these are fit young men who ought to be fighting for their country. It's as if 230 years ago, George Washington and all the fit guys had all scrammed over to Canada and left the old folks and the kids and the women to fight the Revolutionary War.
Thank you. That is a great point. Our young men that age froze to death at Valley Forge, hoping to liberate their nation. Meanwhile, you're right. We don't know who these refugees are, but we do know who was the attempted murderer of a police officer in Philadelphia. We know because he told us he was doing it in the name of Islam and he was inspired by ISIS. But here's the mayor of Philadelphia moments after the police revealed that fact.
In no way, shape, or form does anyone in this room believe that Islam or the teaching of Islam has anything to do with what you've seen on that screen.
And he went on to, make sure that everyone knew all the way up to the White House. I love your post about that this weekend, Mark. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, this mayor in Philadelphia, I don't think you're aware that he is one of the leading Quranic scholars. You know, he graduated from the finest madrasa in Yemen, so he knows. Yeah. Don't pay any attention to the Pope. The Pope who says he did this in the name of Islam, that Pope doesn't know anything about Islam. But this imam who's become mayor of Philadelphia, he knows everything about Islam. The point to remember when you hear stories like this is that Islam is nothing to do with Islam. So whenever you hear somebody saying Allahu Akbar, that's Arabic for there's nothing to see here. Islam is nothing to do with Islam. As long as that's what the mayor of Philadelphia says, that's what John Kerry says, that's what Barack Obama says, that's what Francois Hollande says, that's what David Cameron says. Islam is nothing to do with Islam. They should put it on a bumper sticker.
Meanwhile, tomorrow night at the State of the Union, we've been talking earlier about the fact that the First Lady is going to have an empty chair next to her. Who are and in that particular case, it's supposed to represent what is it, Larry? The
victims of gun violence.
The victims of gun violence in America. And we've asked our audience to, if you could have that chair represent something, what would it be? I'm just dying to know what your thought would be.
Well, I think it would represent the surplus in American furniture warehouses because increasingly large numbers of Americans are unable to afford chairs, and I think that's I think that's the tragedy. We now have situations where at Thanksgiving dinner, some people have to stand up round the table, and it's just something that we have to do something about. I may say, by the way, I don't want to come the unassimilated foreigner on you, but this whole State of the Union thing is like a rip-off of what they call in Canada or Britain or Australia the throne speech, which is where the Queen comes out and reads in a flat, monotone voice the legislative program for the next year.
Right.
But say what you want about the Queen, say what you want about George III. George III didn't go, hey, I'd like to have a big hand for the Syrian refugees standing up there in the crowd. Hey, take a bow. Hey, take a bow, Ahmed. And there's an empty chair. There's an empty chair right next to Ahmed for where the revolutionary colonists would be sitting if we hadn't kicked them out of the event. Hey, take a bow.
This is why we love Mark Steyn. Hey, Mark, before we leave you, you're so good on. I would love for you to comment on the passing of David Bowie, if you have any thoughts about that, because he obviously had an impact on our culture and on other musicians.
Well, my personal trainer liked to play Under Pressure for me to work out to.
Yeah, it's a great one.
David Bowie and Queen, which is a terrific theatrical number. Young Americans, the intro of that is one of the all-time great intros in pop music. A fact that a lot of people don't know about David Bowie is that he wrote the original lyric to My Way. And he
Frank Sinatra's My Way? No way. That's amazing.
The original, that's a French tune. The first English lyric to My Way was written by David Bowie. That's your fascinating fact of the morning.
All right. We got to leave it there, Mark Steyn, but thank you. By the way, my running playlist includes Under Pressure. So another thing Mark Steyn and I have in common, except I would never write an album about cats. Feline Groovy. Yeah. Thank you, Mark Steyn. And I'm gonna.
Hey, thanks, guys.
I'm gonna buy this Feline Groovy songs for swinging cats.